Welcome to the Shields on Hoops podcast. We're coming at you a little bit later than usual today. Had something come up and had to miss the game live. Nick watched it though, so we'll hear his thoughts early here. But Syracuse with a nice 20-plus point win at home in an ACC SEC challenge, which is always a good thing to see, especially in a game that was kind of like a pick 'em when you're talking odds and people picking who's going to win. Syracuse, slow first half, both teams really, and they just cooked in the second half. All right, so I've watched the 10-minute kind of ACC condensed game. I've clipped a couple things that I saw on the Twitter page, but Nick watched it in live speed, and so I'm gonna kind of go over to him for now, get his initial thoughts, and I'll pipe in a little bit. I'll talk some stats, and then we'll talk a little bit about different things we saw from the guys and the team in general. So, Nick, co-host. Nick Peckham, let's. I always forget to introduce you like right immediately, but I always give you the first talking point. So go ahead and hit us with your initial thoughts here on this nice win for Syracuse.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It was lightly way to put it. It was a ugly first half for both teams. Syracuse was up 33-28 going into halftime. So Syracuse escaping that first half up 5 was kind of a huge win for them. The way they played. At one point, they were shooting like 27% from the floor. We went like a whole 10 minutes of the first half, 10 and a half minutes without scoring a field goal at all. Not very impressive. But Syracuse came out in the second half really energized. And I don't know what Adrian Autry talked to them at halftime about, but they came out and they swung hard, and they kept swinging for the whole second half. Obviously, the major talking point was Judah Mintz. He played 38 minutes last night, had 33 points. He set a career high, 13 of 15 from the free throw line, and just very impressive. 9 of 16 shooting, very, very impressive. He was getting downhill. He hit 2 of 2 from 3. He started the second half with a couple and ones, and just nobody on that team could guard him. Nobody could stay in front, and I think he realized that early, and he just kind of kept taking advantage of it. Over and over and over and over again. And then obviously in the second half, Chris Bell got hot from 3. He made 6 threes total. He was 6 of 10, 20 points. Huge game for Chris Bell. And like really, when you look at it, other than that, I mean, everybody else was under 10. I think the next highest point total was 7, and that was Malik Brown. So like outside of those two, it was kind of like just here and there pick 'em. But those two really led the way. And it was overall a very impressive win for Syracuse. Obviously, we talked about it. It was kind of a pick'em game. I know the line was like 1.5 when we talked, and then we were talking after our pod, and it kind of got down to 1. So it was kind of whoever.
It was picked, and it was LSU by 1, and it was Syracuse by 1.
Yeah.
So I think at tip it was Syracuse by like half a point or by 1. So.
Yeah. So to dominate, and again, LSU's not the greatest offensive team, but to dominate an SEC team the way they did in the Dome, especially coming back from Maui, this team really looked locked in and engaged. We'll have to see what happens Saturday. Massive matchup this weekend at Virginia, which we'll talk about on our next pod. But yeah, I mean, overall, Chris Bell played great. Judah played great. Naheem McLeod had a great game. For Naheem McLeod to outscore and out-rebound Will Baker is very impressive. And he had some very nice plays on the defensive side of the ball as well. Justin Taylor was a beast on the boards, moving the ball, struggled shooting a little bit, but a lot of his shots were good shots. JJ only 3 points, but JJ played good. But overall, everybody on this team that touched the floor had a major impact in this win. And like I said, this is a very impressive win moving forward. I know Syracuse jumped up in the Ken Palm ratings in almost everything massively after a game like this, which is always good for the Ken Palm guys. But yeah, I mean, Syracuse played great. LSU definitely struggled. They were 2 of 22 from 3. But it just this Syracuse team looked different than any other game that they've played this year. Obviously the Chaminade game, but like that's a Division II school. That's what you're technically supposed to do to a school like that. Mm-hmm. But like in every other game they've played, you kind of like it clicks and then it doesn't click and then it clicks and then it doesn't click. Last night felt like it clicked the whole time. So hopefully this is something that we can build on moving forward and definitely roll with towards the future.
Yeah. I second all that. Like I said, I've watched as much as I could get my hands on. And some things that I kind of noticed along top. Well, first off, like I think LSU, it goes 2 for 22 from 3, right? And some of that Syracuse, some of that is just not making a dang shot. Like I know they got some open looks here and there. They didn't fall at all. And then those guys were shooting like 36% for the year. So like the whole, like the everything statistically leading up to this was like flipped. When you look at the stats for LSU and Syracuse going into the year or into the game versus what happened. And LSU, they had some decent competition. And so like you thought, well, okay, that the numbers are probably fairly what they will be like, but that's not how they played. I'll be interested to see how they do the rest of the way this season, because I think they got some pieces. But SEC's tough, man. SEC's tough. But again, now look, you're LSU, okay? You fly in from Baton Rouge. It's freaking snowing.
It's a snowstorm in Syracuse.
You're in Syracuse, New York, and it's like you're like, where in the what is actually happening? Like those are things I think we forget about a lot. Like, you're 18, 19, 20 years old, and if you're an LSU recruit, you're probably not a New England dude, right? You're probably a Southern kid, and you fly up there, and you're like, is this another planet? You know what I mean? So those things, like, they sound kind of silly, but first off, LSU is very far away from Syracuse to begin with. So like there's a lot of travel there involved, and Syracuse is going to experience things like that next year, like going to Stanford, going to Cal, like doing things like that. That's going to be really interesting. That's a kind of another thing about the ACC that's kind of interesting going into things. But anyway, I thought the ball movement was really good. It looked crisp. It looked intentional. Like it looked like modern. It looked like modern basketball, right? Like the ball was swinging. It was going one more. Like guys were passing up good shots for great shots. That was really encouraging. I like the defense intensity. The
like you mentioned, the ball movement last night was nothing like we've seen this year. Like it felt like they trusted, like everybody trusted the next person, and it was like you said, there was times where we had good shots, one more pass for a great shot, and like you love to see that with a team like this.
Exactly. Yeah. It was. I mean, Syracuse is going to be hard to beat when they make 11 threes in a game. It doesn't matter who they're playing. Like, I don't care if they go 11 for 30. If they make 11 threes in a game, like they're going to be very difficult to beat. It gives them a whole new element. And the encouraging thing we were talking a little bit earlier is that when you have dynamic guards, like especially Judah, but also JJ, who can get to the rim, like it draws so much attention that these guys are going to get great looks all year long. Like Chris Bell and Taylor are going to get good looks all year. So it's just knocking those things down.
And to piggyback off of that, if they're hitting these threes, then guys can't sag off. So now you get one-on-one wide open lane opportunities for JJ and Judah.
100%. There were several times when I was clipping the videos that I was like, well, if you're the defense, what do you do? Like, it's what I've been begging for like the last 4 years, right? Like, just put a shooter in the corner and give your best driver the ball. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, right? Because again, if you are guarding Justin Taylor or Chris Bell in the corner and Judah Mintz is coming at you, are you going to let Judah Mintz go one-on-one and get to the foul line and just body the other team? Or are you going to make him kick it out for a three in the corner? Like, it's a lose for defenses when you have a dynamic NBA talent type guard like Judah Mintz is. Like, I don't know what Judah's career is going to be like in the NBA or what he's going to do, but like he is a top-notch guard in college basketball. Like, he just is. So it puts defenses in a very, very tough spot. And I'm glad to see it happening. Like, I'm glad to see it happening. Yeah. Chris Bell, 6 threes. Love to see it. I mean
one more. He had I know you said you caught clips of like the ACC breakdown and things like that. There was late in the second half. He had a very nice block on a drive. I forget. I think it was one of the guards, either JJ or Judah. They got not beat to the rim, but the guy got to the rim, and Chris Bell came over and blocked it off the top of the backboard, and then kind of stared down at the guy as he was laying on the floor. But yeah, it seems like when Chris Bell is hitting shots, everything else in this game kind of takes another step up.
For the whole, it's the whole team though too. It's just like when that three ball goes down, right? Like everything amps up a little bit. Like everything amps up a little bit. Offense gets more crisp. Defense gets more tuned in. It's just one of those things that with this team, when they hit threes, like the whole energy kind of and vibe changes. Some things that I didn't love that I saw. JJ struggled a little bit, had some silly turnovers at times.
Offensive rebounding.
Yeah, I also thought that there were some really bad turnovers that led to easy buckets. Like as good as Syracuse's defensive efficiency was in this game, like if you take away those 4 or 5 just like pick 6 layup turnovers, because they had like I think they had 3 or 4 that were just turnovers straight to a dunk.
Right? Yeah, it was late too. It became like
back.
Yeah, one that I remember right off the top of my head was Quadir Copeland was in the game and he brought the ball up and like Judah, I think he was on like the right side of the floor and Judah was at the top of the key and like he looked at Judah and went to go pass it and the guy jumped the passing lane. And like those are the little things that like obviously when you're up 25 it doesn't matter as much, but those are the little things that like you have to get out of the game.
Well, that's what gets you playing time or not, right? Like those are things that when Autry sees, like, can I trust you? Like the doing those little things right, because we've all seen flashes of Quadir. Like we all see it.
Last night you saw it. There was back-to-back plays. One play he got the ball and he threw it ahead and turned it over, and the next play he comes down and has a magnificent behind-the-back pass for a bucket. So like, and
then he had that Euro step. Like so, like you see it. And I mean, and we don't have to dive into this, but like I think next year he's going to be a problem. Like I think he's going to be very, very good next year. So yeah. But we can talk about all that later. I thought Naheem looked good. Again, Naheem did what Naheem needs to do to A, play, and B, impact the game. He had several blocks.
If you tell me, like, if I give you Naheem's stat line, 6 points, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks, 1 steal, and 1 fall, and he played 19 minutes, you're going to take that 100 times out of 100.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because 3 blocks that's basically a turnover. Because when he blocks shots, he is so good at it that the ball stays in play. I think 2 of those 3 blocks led to transition for Syracuse last night. So like because he blocks it so easily a lot of the times and keeps it like alive and it bounces off the glass, like it allows for Syracuse to get out and go and throw ahead. And it's basically like an outlet pass, right? Like we are now, it's 4-on-3 the other way. So yeah, if he does stuff like that, like all we need him to do, like don't get destroyed in the post, which he did great against Baker, and make those plays, and he will play. He will play.
I will say, speaking of Naheem, they actually ran the first play of the game, or our first offensive possession of the game. They actually posted him up on Baker, and he got to the middle of the floor and did a little hook shot, and it just rolled off the front of the rim. But like those are the things where like keep guys engaged, because like we've talked about it plenty of times already. They've only played 7 games technically, not counting exhibition, but like we've talked about it all year. At some point, they're going to need Naheem to play like he did last night against a guy like Will Baker, because once you hit this stretch where, I mean, we talked about it, the next 4 games are big games for Syracuse in the non-conference, 1 conference game. And then once you get into the ACC, like it becomes a different story where you're playing twice a week and like you're going up. There's a lot of good big guys in the ACC. So like having a guy like Naheem, and like the biggest thing to me is he played 19 minutes last night, went up against one of the better big men in the SEC in Will Baker, and only had 1 personal foul.
Yeah.
I mean, if you remember last year, there was times where Jesse would pick up too early and have to go sit for 9 minutes in the first half.
Yeah, that being 5 inches longer helps. keep him out of foul trouble. Like he can just kind of, yeah, I agree. I thought Malik was good too. I thought he had some great minutes.
Phenomenal.
Like he just does all the little things that sometimes get in the box score, but sometimes don't. But like
they mentioned last night in the broadcast, the commentators actually mentioned like how Malik and Quadir are like two guys that like know their role and they excel in that role, and that's what you need with a team like Syracuse, where you have two great guards. You have two guys who are, when they're hot, are knockdown shooters from anywhere on the court, a big guy. So you need guys who will do the dirty work and get the loose balls and get steals and things like that. And that's what Malik and Quadir do.
Malik's that guy that when you're playing pickup, you pick him up for your team a little bit earlier than maybe a more skilled offensive player, just because he's going to help you win. Like you sacrificed your draft pick for like the guy who can maybe shoot it a little better offensively, but you pick him up because he's going to get his hand on loose balls. He's going to get deflections. He's going to get on the floor. He's going to block shots. He's going to rebound. He's not going to quit on plays. Like he's and this is a Syracuse pet peeve, just like jogging back in transition right now, sometimes either on offense or defense. Like when Syracuse gets an offensive breakaway, like they just kind of jog down there. When Syracuse gets beat in transition the other way, they just kind of jog. Malik Brown does not jog. Malik Brown sprints. Like he had that. I think he had a really nice putback in transition, where when the ball was at half court, he was the farthest guy away from the ball, like back court, but he stuck with it. And he just does what he does. Like, so I love watching him play.
There was speaking of your Syracuse guys and being lazy, getting back on defense. That play that you clipped. That play that you clipped when Judah dove on the floor and hit the ball. Right before that, Judah went in the post and he kind of got hit in the head and there was no call. So he was like complaining with the ref. And he ended up turning around and getting back on defense, knocked the ball away, dove on the floor, tipped it to Chris Bell, and then Chris Bell threw it ahead where Naheem had the left-handed dunk. But, like, that's the thing. Like, you guys are too athletic and talented to just give up on plays. If you don't get the call, you don't get the call. Go get the ball back on the defensive side of the ball and come back down and score on offense. Yeah,
exactly. So those are just things you watch on film, and you're like, that's just not how we play. Like, that's culture stuff. Like, we don't do that here. Like, like the Villanovas of the world, they don't do that. Like you watch those guys play. Like and because those programs and cultures understand that every single edge is important. And Syracuse has just kind of been loosey-goosey with that stuff as of late. So I hopefully that's something that, Red's trying to change and make important. Every play matters. You can't take plays off. And that doesn't just mean like you're playing hard. You just have to like be mentally tuned in for 40 straight freaking minutes. Like you have to, right? I thought Benny looks like he's still trying to find his way. Looks a little bit lost. It's kind of like, where do I fit in? I think that Tennessee game and him, or was it Tennessee or which game was he not available for? The Gonzaga game where I think that Gonzaga game where he wasn't able to play, I think it's just thrown off his equilibrium. Because again, like it's been such a roller coaster ride, and it's just, I don't know, man. Like,
and I will say I mean, outside of the people in the program and around the program, nobody knows why he didn't play against Gonzaga. That's still in house and things like that. So like, it either was something he did in practice, or maybe Adrian Autry didn't like how he played against Tennessee, or just who knows at this point.
It happened within 12 hours, whatever it was. But and one thing, and I'm not trying to be critical of the kid, but like when you watch the bench during the games, like when he's not playing, like everybody is up, holding up the three, like Chris Bell's shooting threes, right? Everybody's up. They're hoping the ball goes in. They're tuned in. They're engaged. Like JJ did not play well for long stretches tonight. He had some rough patches there, but when he was not on the floor, engaged in the bench. Like, think about Quadir last year when he barely played at all, engaged, right? But like Benny just kind of just hanging out.
Even like Chance out with an injury.
He would be a huge piece to this team. He's out there like when Judah had the dunk when he dunked on the dude from LSU and got the N1. Like Chance was the first one jumping up and down and things like that.
It's like Benny's just hanging out, man. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. And it might be nothing. It might just be his personality. I'm not saying guys have to be rah-rah to be good teammates because you don't. You don't have to be a rah-rah to be a good teammate. Optically, we see it and we look and we don't know the full story. But I'm just saying from my observational standpoint, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, he just seems kind of, I don't want to use the word checked out, but he just kind of seems like he's trying to figure out where he belongs on this particular team, right? Because he was starting, now he's not because he's getting outplayed. Like, I mean, even though Justin's not scoring a lot, he's still playing better than Benny. Like he
had 7 rebounds and 5 assists last night.
He's still contributing to winning, very much so. Like I think Justin is underrated in throwing the ball ahead in transition. I think he does a good job of sharing. I think he understands the game really well. And he knows when to swing it. He knows when to hold on to it. He's got to get better finishing. He's got to add some more to his game. Obviously, we know this. But I think again, when we said earlier, like he's playing 4 basically right now because Bell's just not strong enough. But like Justin's stocky enough to where he has that. He's 6'6", 218. He's got the leverage. He's got the physicality. He's not afraid to bang. So he's doing just fine. And what I think is happening is it's making it hard for teams to guard Syracuse on the other end. Like, yeah, it might look like a defensive like disadvantage when Syracuse is on defense, which I don't even know if it is. It makes it easier for us to switch everything, honestly. But when you flip that and you're on the other side of the ball, it's hard to guard. You got a 4-man who is either on Benny who's either on Chris or Justin, and again, you stick a 4-man in the corner.
Last night they had Reed early in the game was guarding Justin Taylor. And again, Reed is a guy who likes to get in the paint and things like that. So like having to come out and guard on the perimeter it's a different animal. And like a lot of times guys sag off because they're not used to it. They don't want to get blown by, things like that. So like, and like one thing I noticed last night, like obviously Justin guarded Reed. Reed had, I think he finished with a double-double or close to, 14 and 11. Like Justin held his own for the most part, right? And not all 14 points were scored on Justin, but Justin held his own. And then like Chris Bell, all the guards were switching. So Chris Bell guarded all 3 of their guards. He guarded Wright, he guarded Williams, he guarded Stewart, and he guarded the couple guys that came in off the bench. But like when you can put Bell on a guard like that with his length, and he's quick enough to stay in front of most guards. So like he's gonna like you can sag off a little bit and still gonna hand up to contest because you're 6'5", 6'6", and you're guarding guys who are 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2".
Exactly. Yeah. Let's take a look at numbers real quick.
I will say I'll throw a number out right now. Rebounds. Syracuse out rebounded LSU 43 to 36. And if you would have watched the first 10 minutes of that game, you would have told me I'd be crazy if I told you they won the rebounding by 7, because at one point I think they were getting out rebounded like 20 to 11.
Yeah.
And they gave up like 9 offensive rebounds. So the fact that they adjusted to that, and it's not like LSU started making shots, so there wasn't any rebounds because they didn't make many more shots.
I think it might be flipped too, though. Syracuse started making shots. So like because if you look at that second half, like Syracuse was making shots, LSU was not making shots. So if Syracuse is making shots, that means LSU can't get rebounds.
And it was everybody. So there was times where like there was one time where 3 Syracuse players went up to get a rebound. And I'm okay with that. If you're gonna fight for the ball, I'm okay with that because we need that kind of energy. I think it was Judah, Benny, and Justin or something like that. They all went up for the same rebound.
I was watching a game this weekend, and some guy got like a foul for like moving a guy or like get. I was like,
I would love that. I would take a foul like that.
I would love to see just somebody. I want to see somebody get a foul on a rebound, like an aggressive, like primal foul on a rebound. LSU still got 42% of their misses though.
Yeah,
42% of their own.
I mean, that was early though. They had in the first half, I think it was close to like 59%. So it went down in the second half by a major number, but like
50, that's wild. LSU was 56% on their twos, and they were 9% on their threes.
And I mean, if when you watch the game and go back and actually watch the whole thing, a lot of their threes, like the last 5 minutes of the game, they just started chucking some.
Yeah.
So, like at one point, it was like 2 for 14, and then they're down 20. So every time they get the ball, they're just chucking up threes. So like their number gradually gets down to 9.1% as the game goes on.
So we mentioned Ken Palm earlier. Syracuse moved up 26 spots overall. So they went from 126 to 100. Moved up 16 spots in offensive efficiency, 29 spots in defensive efficiency, 72 spots in three-point percentage.
You said 29 spots in defensive efficiency. So now think about what we talked about earlier. If you get rid of those 4 or 5 plays of lazy turnovers, that 8 or 10 points, now LSU scores 47 or 49. So you may move up 40 spots in defensive efficiency.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and it's still early with the data and all that. And like, so like when you have a big game, like the sample size is smaller, so there's more of an impact. But again, and I'll take this as so there are some people who were on, or Mike Waters was talking a little bit about Ken Palm and how it works, like, and how LSU is still ahead of Syracuse in the rankings. Like, it just doesn't work that way. There's not a voting system. There's not like, it's just, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. It's body of work. It's how you did against certain teams. Like, so if you do well against the teams that are good on your schedule in certain areas, that's going to bump your overall efficiency up, right? It's not about, well, they played us and we beat the piss out of them. Like, that's not what it's about. It doesn't work that way. And you also got to consider there are 363 other teams in the country, 362 other teams in the country. So like every game like is impacting each thing in some kind of minor or major way. So it's just not as simple as, oh, we're better than them. Like, okay. Like, still, if you look at the overall numbers for the whole entire year, LSU still has better numbers than us. And that's fine.
I will say one stat that sticks out to me. You mentioned it when we did our pregame pod about LSU Ken Palm stats. LSU's free throws, you mentioned they were one of the better teams in the country at getting to the free throw line. And I mentioned how Syracuse needs to keep them off the line. They were 7 of 10, and Syracuse was 19 of 23. So, I mean, Judah shot more free throws by himself than the whole LSU team did.
Yep. I mean, it's good stuff, man. Syracuse did the things they needed to do to win. Last Ken Palm thing, and then we'll start to sign off here. 3-point defense moved up 137 spots.
Well, when a team shoots 9%.
That is wild, right? So when you look at the Syracuse defense from 3, if you throw in a 2 for 22 game, like, yeah, okay, like that, you can see how that would like be such a big down or uptick or downtick, however you want to look at it. All right, so Syracuse has UVA on Saturday. Yours truly will be in attendance. I'm like 45 minutes from Charlottesville. I'm actually going to be in Charlottesville tonight for the A&M UVA game, do some scouting. So UVA plays Texas A&M tonight. If you guys want to tune into that and check it out and see what UVA kind of does. We'll talk more about them in depth, but they're really led by Reese Beekman, who I think is probably going to have Judah. So that's going to be a premier guard matchup between those guys. We talked about the schedule as well, like, right? So you got LSU, UVA, Cornell, Georgetown, Oregon. I think 3 wins out of that is good. I think 4 wins is great. The LSU game, I didn't want to say it. It kind of felt like a must win if you really want to give yourself some space in.
Well, I will say they played like that.
If you drop this game, like your opportunities
to recover.
Your opportunities for anything notable on your non-conference schedule. It makes that Oregon game like humongous if you lose this one. Now the Oregon game is still big, and Syracuse will be favored to not be favored. They won't be favored to win that game, but it doesn't have as much pressure on it, right? But if you get that, like, you get LSU, who hopefully stays a top 100 team. Cornell is going to be close to a top 100 team this year. Who knows what Georgetown's going to do? UVA is going to be a top 50, top 75 team probably. I don't think they're as good as they have been. This will be a challenge. And then you've got that Oregon game, who they've got some injuries. So it's very interesting. I mean, it's very interesting. This upcoming schedule, I like it. I think it provides some great opportunities for Syracuse. But if they can get 4 wins out of that, man, if they can go 3-1 the rest of the way in those 4 games, I'll be pretty happy. Unless the loss is to Georgetown, and
that's tough, right?
A, they're the worst team on that slate, and B, it's Georgetown.
It's that rivalry. Are we in Georgetown this year?
Yes, in DC.
Before we sign off, I'll just go around the ACC for our ACC SEC challenge. Georgia Tech got a massive win at home against Mississippi State last night. They won by 8. South Carolina beat Notre Dame by 12. Kentucky dominated Miami at Rupp Arena. I watched part of that game like at halftime of the Syracuse game, and after the SU game ended, I went and watched that. Kentucky looked really good in the second half. At one point, I think like to start the half, they made 11 of 12 shots, and like 7 of them were threes. They just took off. Missouri beat Pitt in Pitt. That's kind of a tough loss for Pitt, from what I've heard so far early on. Ole Miss smacked NC State by 20 in Ole Miss, and Clemson got a massive win over Alabama. Joe Girard actually had a really nice game. I think he scored. Hold on, I'm looking right now. 16 points. He hit 4 threes. So that was a big win for Clemson.
Somebody was on my Twitter like about a week ago talking about Joe Girard padding his stats in the early season against cupcake teams, and he was like, "Yeah, we'll see what he does against Alabama." There's your answer, buddy.
And then tonight we got Tennessee, North Carolina at 7:15 on ESPN. That's a potential 2 Elite 8 teams right there. Should be a good one. Obviously Texas A&M, Virginia, which Brandon is going to head to and do some scouting for Syracuse there. Florida, Wake Forest, Duke, Arkansas should be a good game. Arkansas has had a slow start to the year, but they are just as talented as any other team in the country if they can put it all together. Boston College, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Auburn. And it looks like Louisville is not part of the ACC SEC challenge this year. They will play tonight. They'll play Bellarmine.
Bellarmine. Who beat them?
And Louisville's 3-3, but they are the only ACC team that is not part of the ACC SEC challenge. But that's what the slate looks like tonight. So there's some pretty good games. Texas A&M just went toe-to-toe with FAU out in, I think it was Florida, Disney World. So we'll see what happens in that game. Hopefully Virginia wins, so that way we don't have to play Virginia coming off a loss. But
there's some good games on there, man. You're gonna learn a lot about a lot of the ACC teams tonight. Like there's a lot of good a lot of good challenges of where teams like that are seemingly fairly on the same playing field. They're going to learn a lot about a lot of those teams tonight.
Yep. So that's that. Syracuse got a massive win by 23 at home. Hopefully they can build off of this. Like we've mentioned, they have a huge game coming up Saturday. It'd be nice to get that win, go 6-2, and also get an ACC win, especially against a team like Virginia, who they may not be as good as they've been in the past years, but they're still going to be up at the top at the end of the season, no matter what. So
still a road game in Charlottesville, dude. And it's never an easy win. All right. I think that wraps us up. Unless you have anything else you want to add, Nick. I think we're good, right?
I don't. All I'll say is, like I mentioned earlier, everybody for Syracuse who touched the floor last night made a huge impact on that game last night. And if Syracuse can figure it out and they can get JJ going a little bit and Justin Taylor to hit some shots, this could be a scary team down the road for sure.
Yeah, a lot of good things are happening. So we'll see if they can do the same thing. Going on the road in an ACC game at UVA in December is a heck of a test. So I think we'll learn even more about these guys on Saturday. All right, that's it from us. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things you do. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment on Twitter, shoot us messages, whatever you want to do to interact. We're game for that.
I'll throw a little hint out. I might have a special guest for us on our pregame Virginia podcast. In the works right now, so nothing's set in stone. But I'm trying to get a potential former Syracuse player to jump on and talk Virginia game.
Beautiful. Would love to see it. So that's awesome. All right, that's it from us. Thank you guys, and we'll see you Saturday morning for the Syracuse preview or the UVA preview. Maybe Friday night since it's a noon game. We'll see, but we'll be in your inbox soon. Thanks, guys.